There we go. Oh, it's very close. Welcome to the live stream for Chinese Medicine Podcast. I'm going to be answering people's questions, and so I'm going to wait for some people to jump on the stream. But if you're just watching this after the event, I've got a different setup today. It's like I'll try to make myself just a little bit less big. Let me just see if I can do that. Otherwise, I'll be so. Is that doing it? Let's see. Not particularly. That's all right. I'll just whiz my chair back a bit. So if people want to put their questions into the question, hi, Arav, welcome. So if people have questions, feel free to pop those into the comments and share the stream if you want to, if you've got friends that are interested in Chinese medicine as well. So I'm going to talk quickly about a couple of books that are useful if you're learning Chinese medicine, you're interested in learning it. I've mentioned this one on the channel before. So when I teach Chinese medicine first year, this would be one of the number one books I'd recommend to students to understand how Chinese medicine works for yourself. So like if you are wanting to help yourself learn about diet therapy, that kind of stuff, then that's what this book teaches you. So this is by a guy called Bob Floors, and he doesn't really do much stuff now, like publishing stuff, but it's pretty easy to read. It's easily kind of set out. And the main sections that are good in it are about explaining what's Chinese diet therapy all about, why should you eat mostly cooked foods. I don't agree with every single thing that he's saying in here, but it's a good start. It's a good way to start kind of understanding it. And particularly it gives you something that isn't mentioned anywhere else that I've ever noticed, which is all these like functions of things like vitamins and amino acids, minerals, in Chinese medicine. How do they work? What do they do? Where he got this information from, we don't really know. So he might have inferred it some way. Obviously he has, but that it's just an interesting place to start if you are interested in that kind of stuff. And sometimes when you think about things, when you've really got your Chinese medicine hat on, you can be like, oh, that actually, I can realize how that makes sense. So, that's good. What's also good about this book is he talks a little bit about what's dampness and phlegm, and he talks about what's coffee in Chinese medicine, alcohol, those kinds of things, just the basic stuff. So that's one book I want to recommend. Very easy to get hold of that one. It's called The Tao of Healthy Eating by Bob Floors. I'm not endorsed by these book people. I just recommend them to start with. So if you're just tuning into the stream, please feel free to put your questions in. And if you're tuning in afterwards and you think, oh, damn, I missed the stream, no worries. You can put your questions in because people know that I still talk about them and answer them. And usually with these things, people take a while to jump on. So there's two books I want to mention here. This is called the Illustrated Yellow Emperor's Canon of Medicine. This is a cartoon version of the Neijing. So it's very easy to understand the basic concepts. This is not obviously not a scholarly text, but it gives you an idea of how to understand it if you're a first year student and you're really, really struggling, or you're just a person that wants to learn more about Chinese medicine. Then this is a great resource to have because it's a way of understanding especially if you're a pictorial kind of person, you can kind of get a gist of it, get an idea of it. So that's what that's about. Talks about seasonal health and all the different chapters. I wonder if it's in chapters in here. Just sort of starts with 12 organs, and then it actually doesn't go and tell you chapter by chapter what it is, like what chapter of the Neijing it is. It's just not really sure how they've organised that, but they do. Sorry, at the top they've got manifestations of yin and yang. Another chapter on yin and yang, part 7. So I don't know how they've organised this. In some way it's organised, right? Different methods of treatment, Anyway, I thought I'd mention that. Now, you can get these off of Amazon or sometimes off eBay, or, sometimes even Chinese medicine practitioners who've had them sell their books. And that's a good way to find these kinds of things, or look out for them in op shops. I actually bought this in Shanghai once when I was first practicing. I remember my teacher had this book, and when I went to Shanghai to study Chinese medicine, I found this and I was like, oh, that's so great. If people are having trouble to hear, just let me know, please, because I'm a bit back from the microphone. I'm not as close. I can make it louder. I can go louder. I've just got a different setup. I was trying to make the computer like in front of the screen almost, like so I'm not on the side. But the camera's very close to here. Anyway, so if people have questions, that's what this live stream's about, asking your questions, Q&A. One more book that I'll talk about while we get the questions coming in and the people jumping on. This is called The Illustrated Book of Traditional Chinese Health Cultivation. I think it's the same illustrator as the other one because the things are pretty similar. This is another cartoon book, and the concept of keeping your body healthy or longevity practices is like often referred to as cultivation of health. So this is another one that just talks about how to stay healthy in Chinese medicine. Like, what are these different aspects doing in our body and in a cartoon way? Who doesn't love a cartoon way? So I just thought I'd mention that to you. I'm just trying to see. Apparently, so this is, I'll just put this up on the screen, then you can kind of look for the cover will be the same. Anyway, so if you have a question about Chinese medicine, put it in the comments. Ask away. Did you want to ask a question? You can if you want to. Cool. So I'm also doing a course in Chinese medicine next year. So that's something new that I'm going to be doing. So you can jump onto my website. I'll put the link in. It's in the description of the most recent video I made. And there's also a link on, if you go onto the YouTube channel, there's a few videos before where I said, learn Chinese medicine with me. And so I'm doing a new course. I've changed the date to 2022 for it to start then. So it's the 3-part course where you'll learn really in-depth detail about different aspects of Chinese medicine. So you'll learn things like the basic philosophy of Chinese medicine. So the yin yang and the 5 elements. You'll have like a laid out sort of step-by-step of how to understand those concepts for yourself. Like, when you get sick, what does that mean, right? So it'll be quite in-depth. Not everything that you'd learn in a first-year subject, but pretty much the theoretical aspects that you'd learn in a first-year course without the acupuncture treatment, let's say, right? And then that's the first 12 weeks. And then we're going to do Chinese diet therapy principle type of treatments. So basically, like how to use foods as medicine, how to work out what kinds of foods you should be eating in a general diet sense, but then also what foods you can use as kind of treatment foods. So, if you have a cough, you have a sore throat, or you had pain, like what kinds of foods can be used for those kinds of things. So there's heaps of foods, and there's lots of food methods, like medicinal wines is a whole method of foods. And this is where you get a bit of a crossover between food and herbs. So, and then the final part in the course, I'm going to answer your question. I'll just have a quick look at that. The final part of the course is about the self-help aspects. So thanks, Ara, for asking a question. Please give me advice. I cure my hair fall problem. You're just 19. What do you do? Yeah, so I just made a video on this subject, actually. So I'm not sure if you're new to the channel or you didn't see it, but it was only a few days ago anyway. Someone did ask this question about hair falling out. And one of the biggest differences in TCM versus classical Chinese medicine, which is like, so in classical Chinese medicine, we still think blood deficiency can cause hair falling out, but we also think that it can be because of what's called like yang floating up to the top of the head. So making this area just too warm, and that can be from a lot of stress. And so when you're 19, so, okay, one disclaimer. Firstly, I don't give individual health advice on this channel, right? So I'm not your doctor. So you would need to check with your own health practitioner for the actual exact advice of what to do. It's not because I want to withhold information to people, but it's just legally I can't do that because one is it's hard to, I don't want to put people in a position to tell their private details. But oops, I've just kicked the microphone. But also, it just kind of highlights how specific Chinese medicine is. So I'll give you some ideas about stuff, and the ideas I'll give you also are like, they're not going to be reckless if you didn't have that pattern, let's say, right? So if you have stress, who doesn't have stress these days? There's lots of things to be stressed about. And you're younger, you tend to have especially males tend to be a bit more hotter in terms of they can get what we call yang ming kind of conditions more easily, not always, but especially if you have so you basically yang ming kind of heat things would be like heat in your digestive system, really. So it would come back to what your pulse is in to get the definitive exact diagnosis and some of your symptoms. But if that was the case, then you'd want to just maybe try things to reduce the stress, things to offset the energy that's building up that's got nowhere to go. So that if you've got stagnation of energy and it all kind of builds up and it goes to the top of your head in that heat, like the yang's rising, that's sometimes what's happening for causing hair to fall out. It could be something you're exposed to because you're quite young for it to happen. Like, are you using something toxic on your hair? Like, are you using something unbeknownst? Like, just you're not sure. Like, you might be washing your hair with something toxic or that kind of thing. So those things could be part of it. And then with your diet, you'd want to make sure that your diet's kind of like the clear, bland diet. If you went on to that clear, bland kind of diet for a couple of weeks, that would essentially, especially if you had any constipation, you want to make sure that that's not happening. It's all kind of moving through you nicely. And that would provide an avenue for the heat to kind of go out. And that's essentially what we would do in a herbal medicine method. Herbs work a lot quicker than food-based treatments, but in some cases like this, if you took the herbs and you didn't take the food-based treatments, then nothing might happen either. Or it might take longer for the herbs to work. So that clear, bland diet, you can look on my video that I've got called Why Eat Mostly Cooked Foods. That's one of the main videos. Not really sure why the quality of the thing isn't great. The thing is just, the video doesn't seem like good quality for some reason. Anyway, so Sherry's asking, is there a Chinese medicine herbal food combination for creating a cream or a skincare at home to rejuvenate skin, especially ice pick scars, to avoid lasers and heavy peels? Yeah, this is a good question. I was actually thinking today I might make some videos about skincare in Chinese medicine. A lot of the stuff I know about skincare and use is still natural, but it's not necessarily Chinese medicine, purely Chinese medicine. So there's something I've got even sitting on my desk right here that I use a lot on my own skin. And you can't even see what it is very clearly because it's all, get my head out of it, but it's frankincense oil. It's all been, used. This would be rubbed on. But this is one of the best things you can use for scars and healing your skin. Now, frankincense oil is expensive, but you don't need very much of it. So what I would normally do is just use the oil neat. Now, with any essential oil, and frankincense is a Chinese herb, so I'll talk about how it works in a Chinese herbs way. Before you've ever used an essential oil, it's good to just test something on the inside of your wrist because that's quite a sensitive area, and if it flares up there, you'll kind of know. But frankincense oil is a really good oil to get rid of scars or treat scar tissue, promote healing of the skin. So you could just drop a few drops of the frankincense oil into your skin cream and then use the cream on it. Or I would just use just to save the money being wasted. Just get the frankincense oil and just wherever the scars are, I'm not sure if they're on your face, it could be anywhere. Just dob it on there, and use that. And just check with your skin sensitivity. Now you can dilute essential oils in a cream. You can dilute it in. You can dilute it in a cream. You can dilute it into a carrier oil. Arnica oil is another oil that's often used for treating skin things and scars and things like that. So you could use a combination of arnica oil and frankincense oil. Now, frankincense in Chinese medicine is a blood-moving herb, and it sort of it moves blood. It also has pain-stopping properties. So that's sometimes what I use frankincense oil for. Like if I've got period pain, or back pain, I sometimes just rub a little bit on my belly or rub it on my back. But mostly what I use this for is like just your skin. And you can put a few drops on your forehead or something if you're feeling like stressed. That can help as well, or in your oil burner. Anyway, that's a bit of a side thing. So another thing that can rejuvenate your skin, so there's two other things that come to mind, Sherry, for rejuvenating your skin. One is the Jade Roller. I don't know if you've seen those Jade Rollers. I might have one around here somewhere. Just have a quick look. I think I've got it in this drawer here. No, I do. This is my music room that I'm in at the moment. And you might be asking, why have you got a Jade Roller in your music room, Marie? Well, because this is where I do all my editing, and I just kind of sit. Might be a bit dirty. I just kind of sit there and use it. So you can use this Jade Roller on these areas. I'm not going to press it too hard because I don't want to roll. I've got makeup on. So you can use that on different areas. Now, what's good about Jade, and you can buy these that are green, you can buy them that are they're sort of a reddy color. It's very cooling, right? And it's really kind of calming and nice. And you can just rub that where you might have scars or obviously. Okay, so let's do it on my hand, so you know it's a bit. Give it a bit of oomph there. Don't just touch it too gently. Now, there's versions of these Jade Rollers that are made. So this is a Chinese medicine kind of beauty thing. There's little spikes on them, and they kind of permeate the skin or penetrate the skin. And that's what's called like dermabrasion treatments. Often beauty therapists use those things. And what they do is they would obviously have clean skin, use that on that area, and then use another serum or something like that goes in and then can absorb into your skin. So I'm not suggesting you do that, but just so that you know that's how those kinds of things were developed and how they work. So these are good to buy. You can just buy them off eBay and those different places and whatever, Jade Rollers. They're getting all super popular now. I bought this in Hangzhou like back in 2000, the year 2000. I've still got it now. So they last for a while. They last forever if you look after them. So that one I would suggest. Now, what else can you use on your skin that I love on your skin, which is kind of Chinese medicine? It is a Chinese herb as well. Clay, right? And I'm not sure about scars, how this would help with scar tissue, but it would certainly help with your skin quality, especially if it's on your face. So there's three clays, or there's many clays, but there's three main clays. So you've got red clay, white clay, and green clay. And you can buy the plain powdery clay and mix that with water, and also then maybe some essential oils if you want to. Because we're talking about skin, I'll just kind of talk a bit about the different clays, I guess, for different things too. But for very sensitive skin, you'd use the white clay. That's the least drawing, which means it draws impure, because all clays are going to kind of draw impurities out of your skin, but they also help to moisten your skin by, helping to hydrate it. So what I do, I've always done this for many, since I was about probably 14 or 13, put face masks on and sleep with the face mask on. And lots of people ask me why have I got good skin. And I think that's one of the reasons. One is I don't go in the sun very often, which probably isn't good for other things, but like I'm pale as. But otherwise you might get all wrinkly and stuff from the sun. But I also use face masks. I've always used face masks. So if you have acne when you're a kid, or teenager, that's one of the best things. The green clay is one of the best things for acne. So if you're firstly using face masks, I wouldn't suggest you sleep with it on. Just use it for the recommended time, which is like the 20 minutes, and then just maybe practice having it on for a little bit of time. If it ever feels burning, like if these are not masks you've made yourself, they're just store-bought things, then don't leave it on. Like anything that feels like it's burning your skin, then you should take that off. And certainly sometimes there's a mud, a Dead Sea mud, and sometimes I mix that into the green clay if my skin was breaking out a little bit, let's say. That doesn't happen very often. But once I put Dead Sea mud just on my skin plain, and it was kind of like, I think I mixed it with some seaweed or something, and it was just like burning. So I'm a bit of a tester, test things out all the time. So that would be not good. You would not want to sleep with it on with that. But the white clay is quite good for, that rejuvenation. There's other products that are used in Chinese medicine for beauty, which is pearl powder. When I was in Hangzhou studying Chinese medicine, that was very popular because I think pearls either grown or they're just harvested or made or whatever in Zhejiang province. So even pearls to wear. And so powdered pearls is like the crushed pearls. Now, it's hard to buy proper pearl powder because they often use these things that aren't pearls and sell it to you as pearl powder. So that's a bummer about it. But if you can get proper pearl powder, like that is incredibly good for rejuvenating your skin. Acupuncture is used for treating scars, like what we would do. So let's say there's a scar. I'll often use my hand as an example. Like you can see all the lines on my hand, right? So let's say that was a scar, which it's not, but let's say it was. What we would do, there we go, put it. What we would do with the acupuncture is then have the needles going sort of this way down, or either along it, so along there, or down, 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 down underneath it, very fine needles, and then they kind of pushing up to encourage the body to produce more collagen. So to treat scars, it's about breaking up the fibrous tissue that's there. So I hope that's somewhat useful. Maybe go and see your acupuncturist and ask them what other self-care things they can give you as well, because they might have some like herbal treatments and things like that. If I have some time to think about this question, I might, if I have a cream recipe or something, then you could try that. Awesome. Thanks for your question, Sherry. I hope that was helpful. I'm not know if I can pronounce your name, but I like your face. Miroslav asks, what herbs can I use to help me quit smoking? No problem. Awesome. Glad it was helpful. Okay. I'm not sure whether Chinese herbal medicine has anything that's generic. Like if you have this herb, you will not be able to tolerate smoking. I'll tell you how acupuncture works for it and how Chinese herbs can work for it. So Buddhists would think, because there isn't a formula that I know of there's no quit smoking formula, if that's what you're asking. Like there's not like, if you, some people think, if I smoke something else that might, I don't know, distract me from the other smoking. There isn't something like that in Chinese medicine. There are things like that in Western herbal medicine, or in maybe they use Chinese herbs in that way, but it's not strictly a part of Chinese medicine. Like, here's the quit smoking herbal formula. It doesn't work like that. But the so how does it work with acupuncture? That's a way of thinking how it might work with herbs. One way, right? So there's lots of points in your ear that are used to kind of stimulate the organs that are associated with smoking. One way of thinking of it. So it's almost like, when you first had a cigarette, and not that I've smoked much, but I've smoked like one packet of cigarettes in my whole life that I decided to smoke on a weekend just to see what it was like. And then I didn't like it and I didn't keep going. So I'm just a weird person. Anyway, so the first time you smoke a cigarette, it's horrible. It's like, what's this horrible thing? And a lot of people who first smoke do it because everyone else is smoking and it's cool, and they're kind of like try to overcome that. But your body naturally, not for everyone, but most people have a dislike of it, like their body's rejecting it. Now there is an aspect of smoking where your body's loving it because it's warm and it's warming your lungs, and your lungs like warmness. Like our body's warm, it likes warm, especially if it's cold weather. So that's one thing. I'm not promoting smoking. I'm not saying it's good at all. It's not good for you. Oh, great, Nicholas, I just saw that thing. Awesome. Thanks for the last live. I'm going to become an ICAMer now. Awesome. You can join the party. Join the ICAM party. You will never, your life will be changed forever. Awesome. So that's great. Anyway, I'll go back to the smoking question. So if you were able to simulate that effect of your organs almost like being renewed, then some people find they reject smoking. And that's generally what happens when you do the quit smoking acupuncture. So it's like these points are stimulating your lung energy, and also the channels that are associated with this area, your throat, your mouth, that kind of thing. So that for some people, when they smoke and they've got these ear points in, or they've had them in for a few days, they feel like it's almost repulsing. Now they can override that by continuously smoking. So this is what I kind of advise to my patients when I'm doing the ear acupuncture. Now, it's possible that you could replicate that with herbs somehow. And it's almost similar to, like, I have some patients where I give them a herbal formula, and there's some herbs that, let's say they're contraindicated with alcohol, for instance, a good example. And you're like, well, your body really needs these herbs because you've checked their pulse and they really kind of need it. And you're like, you're going to have to stop being on the booze to be able to take these herbs. And it's almost like when they do that, for some people, if they can manage to do that, these are people that drink regularly, right? So if they drink every day and they're just like, it's just part of life. So it's not, some of these people aren't even alcoholics or anything. They're just people that have drinks socially, regularly, or, it's not like they're drinking all through the day every day. They just might come home and have a beer every day, but they do that every day. But once they're on the herbs, they sometimes feel, well, I've had the experience where I've noticed with some patients where they're like, well, I didn't really seem like I needed the alcohol when I was on those herbs. It's like when your body gets healthier, it's kind of it's not craving in a way the reasons why you were wanting that other stuff. So that might possibly be an aspect. So I'm sorry, Miroslav, that there is no one there's no one trick wonder for you in terms of there's no one formula that can do that. But if other people have a question, please feel free to ask it. I'll try and answer it. Do my best to answer. I'm glad you've joined ICAM. It's a great program. There's nothing else similar to it that can teach you all that stuff. And especially if you're in the US, I think they're doing the pulse training and all that live, or there's opportunity to do that properly. And a lot of it's online, but there's a massive community of people through Facebook where you can connect with like-minded practitioners, which is awesome. So that's really good. If people have a question, you can ask your questions. That's fine, even if it's you're not sure. Yep. So yeah, I'm running a course next year too. So if people are interested in learning about Chinese medicine as a person, not a practitioner, just for yourself, you can jump onto my website. I'll probably try to put the comment there somewhere. How am I going to do that? And Yes, I'll just move that camera out of the way. So I'm just going to grab this web page and awesome. Oh, good. There's a question there. Okay, I'm going to post this as a comment. So if you're interested in learning about Chinese medicine, this is the course I'm doing next year, 2022. So it starts in January, and there's 3 lots of 12 weeks courses as part of it. Okay. Hi, Marie. What are your thoughts on working with the dosages of acupuncture, i.e. frequency of treatments, within the limitations of costs for the patient, the time available to the practitioner, etc.? Maybe you can tell me, are you an acupuncturist or are you a student or a patient? Not that that should change the answer, but it kind of helped me explain the answer in a different way. And don't apologize for a long question. That's fine. I don't mind them. I know that in China, acupuncture would often be administered daily for certain conditions, but yes, look, and this is a really good question because I think for some things we don't know, and for some things we do know for this because of research studies. So there are some research studies, that there's more research than ever was before. You're a patient, yeah, and a would-be practitioner, awesome. Yeah, so on one hand, we don't know. Like there's so much we don't know. And it's really up to the practitioner's experience. And I'll tell you, like, I'll just be honest because that's what I try to do on this channel. And not that I before that I'm not honest. So there was times in my practice when I first started, right? So I started in the year 2000. That's when I graduated. Where, like, for the first 3 or 4 years, I would just tell patients, just come back when you need to, sort of thing. Like they'd do one treatment, and I didn't really give them an expectation of what they should have, partly because the course I was trained in didn't give us probably adequate training in how to do that. It wasn't that the lecturers didn't know about it. It just wasn't as heavily enforced on us, right? To give people a treatment plan. But at the same time, you don't want to over-service people. And I was like that too. I went to China and I was like, wow, these people are coming in every day. And it's all on the public health dollar. Now, I'm not sure if that's changed now, because when I was, even in 2001, there was lots of people who were on the public health system in China. And they were coming in, they were saying they were sort of like stocking up on herbs and medications and stuff, because they were like, oh, the government's going to stop paying everything, because we're easing out of the full communist mode to this blended mode that they're in now. So basically the government doesn't pay for everything. But at that time, acupuncturists in China didn't get paid very much money. They were getting paid, I think they told me their salary was like 10,000 Australian dollars a year, which is about 5,000 US dollars a year. Not much money. It's back in 2001. So the average salary for an acupuncturist for me would have, to go back, like if there was a salary or whatever, most people would be earning 35 to 50,000 a year. And if they were really good, they might be getting 100 grand, right? At that point. Now, things have changed now. It's probably more the 100 grand is quite a common kind of salary for people to be making. Depends on how many patients they see and all the rest of it. But anyway, what I'm saying is, there's some things where people just literally get no result until the third or sixth treatment even. So there's some things like I've treated lots of plantar fasciitis, and that's a condition where nothing will happen. Literally, nothing will happen for 6 treatments sometimes. Now, if it does happen, that's great, and you kind of encourage patients. Okay, nothing might happen with this condition, like as in no result might happen. So there's a few models that have been developed over the years, like community acupuncture is a model that kind of allows people to have more regular treatments at a lower cost, and subsidizing that for having it in a room with lots of other people. I think there's some things where, like, we're making it really hard for ourselves in the West, right? Maybe harder than it needs to be with some of the things that we do in the way we do the treatments. And there might be things that we could do that would make the acupuncture more cost effective, right? But then it's also very time consuming for people, right? So even if acupuncture didn't cost you any money, it costs you time. And most Westerners don't have time to come in for a treatment every day. And do they have even time to come in for a treatment 2 times a week or 3 times a week? So there's definitely some conditions where they need to come in regularly, like as in 3 times a week or 2 times a week. So if I had a patient that something just happens, so something like Bell's palsy, even some acute kind of back pains, and yeah, some conditions like that. Now, there's some things where there's a really clear guidance from research studies, and you can advise patients like that, and that's a good way to go about it if you're a practitioner, maybe to think how many treatments are needed. Like, you could give people an idea and say, well, in the research, this is what was done, twice a week or once a week or whatever for 6 times. And 28% of the participants had this kind of result. And so you're giving people some kind of data to go by, right? So not that all results are going to be the same, but at least that's kind of like an evidence-based way of practicing in that way. You might not even be doing the same treatments that's in the study, right? But it kind of gives people an idea of when they've had that condition. I think it's a big difference if you're just having acupuncture versus having acupuncture and herbs. So when I went through periods in my practice where I haven't done much herbs before I did the ICAM course. And yeah, so I'd see those patients much more frequently, whereas if they're having herbs, sometimes that's the main part of the treatment and they only need to come in, once a fortnight even, because they're not really, the acupuncture's not the main part of the treatment. It depends. Yeah. So I hope that helps, is somewhat helpful to answer that question. Nicola says, have you treated urogenital infections with herbs? I've used Bajang Sun. Yes. So if you're doing the ICAM thing, you'll probably like Wuling San is one of the formulas, a big formula. Wu, Wuling San, Wuling San. So it also sometimes this stuff might be Genwu Tongue is another formula that's common, but it depends on obviously the symptoms and the pulse. The pulse is the main one actually. So I don't know if you've started the ICAM course or not, but if you have started it and you have done any part of it, you could possibly just put your case on the forum and ask for some help, especially if you have done some of the pulse and you can give out a pulse, then people might know that. I can't kind of answer those questions here because the pulse information is like proprietary information. So don't put that here. Yeah, I'm just thinking of the other formula. There's something else that had come to mind. Look, sometimes it can even be like a Sinisan formula, or it could be the second formula was a Genwu Tongue. I'll just stick it in the. So these are. They're two. They're not opposite formulas or anything, but I'm just like mentioning them. Like one's a like in a TCM way, you could say an excess and deficiency kind of things. But a Genwu Tongue kind of person is generally like really like they're very puffy very easily. And yeah, sometimes mineral herbs, there'd be a modification that you'd use with that kind of formula, but sometimes mineral herbs are used to kind of flush things out, right? So yeah, but Wuling San is like a fundamental formula for that stuff, right? Like it's the first obviously Tai Yang formula, right? So Tai Yang bladder. So when it first happens, there might be a fever with it. If that was the case, then yeah. So sometimes even Dungwei Xiaoyao San's a formula that's commonly used if it's for a female. It could be that kind of pattern. There's a lot of like flushing kind of herbs in that Dungwei Xiaoyao San. Yeah. How long will the ICM course take? It took me 3 years doing the whole Shanghanlun cis, so that was a year and a half, and then the Jingwei part of the course was another year and a half, and that was not taking any breaks, but just I did it all in person. So there was 3 lectures a year for 4 days in Sydney. That's how I did it. So I think if basically those weekend courses, you could smash it all out in a year, I guess, if you did a course every month, if you had the money to do it and you had the headspace to do it, and if you're already a practitioner and you're treating people, then what will happen is after you're kind of doing it for a few months, or maybe a year for some people, they'll start to transition to use those formulas on their patients. And that's when you start to, for me, that's when it started to make sense more, because you're kind of like, oh, okay, now I'm learning about these, like some of the formulas we would have learned in TCM anyway, that still used there, but it's just how you think about those formulas. You're like, you don't just use them in the old way that you used to use them. Yeah. Okay. A couple of other questions. Personally, I think I would benefit from going back to the treatments one. Yeah. So benefit from weekly treatments, but I can only go fortnightly. Yeah. Yeah. Look, that's another thing I was just going to mention. Like, health is multifaceted, right? As in, health is not just your physical health, but like your financial health is part of it. Like if you're not able to like look after yourself financially, then you'll eventually become unhealthy as well, because you won't be able to buy proper food. So it's all a balance between all of that stuff. And the worst thing you can do is just feel guilty. Oh, I'm not doing it right, or I'm not doing it enough. Now, there are some conditions, and again, it just depends on the condition. I've said to some patients, look, if you don't come regularly, you're kind of wasting the treatment. And I've just said that to them outright, because these are people that it's not like they come once a fortnight. They come once, and then maybe in 3 months they come again. And then in a few weeks' time they come again, and they book appointments and don't turn up. And, and they do want to help themselves, but, for some reason they can't keep coming to the appointments for whatever reason. And sometimes with those people, it's not even financial. They say that it is, but then, they're spending money on other things that are, so yeah, look, I understand everyone's circumstances are different. Yeah. All right, let's answer this one. Spiritual Gangster. Oh, that's a good name. SF. Spiritual Gangster. Good morning. Do you have any suggestions for peripheral neuropathy? Yeah, especially in the feet. So, yeah. So one pattern that's a common pattern for peripheral neuropathy. I'm not sure why my camera's like not focusing properly. It seems to be blurry. It doesn't like me being so close to it, I don't think. Maybe that's better tonight. Anyway, I'm sorry. Apologize for that. Why it's blurry. Yeah, so peripheral neuropathy often, not always, but there's often an element of cold blood as a pattern. So again, just to reiterate, not giving out individual advice on the channel. So this is just a hypothetical example. So for someone who may have peripheral neuropathy, so if a patient came in and said that to me, if they, depending on what their pulse was like, before I check their pulse, I'd always feel their hands. So if their hands are really cold, that's a sign of like cold, right? So either they've got cold in their blood, which would give them basically just a lack of warm blood is able to go to the extremities. And so you're simply just warming the blood. So you'd use foods if you wanted to use a food treatment, foods that nourish blood but also warm the blood. So things like ginger, cinnamon. If you had really, really warm hands, this might not help you so much. And it depends on the season where you live. So if you live in somewhere that's going into winter, then you'd want like hotter. When I say hot meats, I mean like meats that are more yang tonic. So smaller animals tend to tonify yang more, like lamb versus mutton or something, or beef. So lamb is better, but not, you don't have to have it all the time. You don't have tons of meat either. But ginger, cinnamon, chai, those kinds of things, like drinking chai tea, that can all be useful to warm the blood. Obviously, circulation is an issue in general. So being able to get moving. But if you sweat, right, and if you've got cold hands and you go out and do the sweating, then that might make it worse for you because you've got cold blood. And when you sweat in Chinese medicine, that's kind of equivalent to losing yang. You're losing the blood flow, not blood flow, but you're losing an aspect of yang. So that can make you feel more depleted if you sweat too much. So be careful about that. Just going to check if there's any other questions. Right, we've done that. Thanks for that. Thank you. We've done that. Yep. Awesome. All right. Does anyone have any other questions? If people have other questions that can be asked, that's fine. Let's go back and see if I missed anything. Oh, here we go. Have I always worked with both herbs and acupuncture? Yep. Yeah, so I was just fortunate when I first did my training. I didn't really know the difference between the two. I was like a little pipsqueak, not knowing anything. And the course it actually was an acupuncture course, but one of the teachers who was running the course convinced the college to make it into a herbs degree as well, because he was kind of like adamant, and I'm so glad that he did. He was like, it's hard to make a living just doing acupuncture. Now, I don't really agree with that. I think it's easier to make a living doing acupuncture and herbs, but if you specialize in one of those two things, you will actually become better at that, and you'll work out a way to run your business so that it's effective and efficient in either way. So over the last 3 or 4 years, I've become more focused on herbs and less focused on acupuncture, right? So it's kind of like that jack of all trades, master of none in a way, if you try to do everything, both of those things. So like within acupuncture, you've got moxibustion, and then within moxibustion, you've got rice grain moxa, the Japanese style. You've got moxa sticks, moxa box. Not that these things are really super hard, but you've got a lot of modalities there. You've got cupping, gua sha, which is the channel rubbing. You've got, different techniques of acupuncture for different conditions and things like cosmetic styles and, Dr. Tan balance method and all these different things. Like there's really a lot you can get into. So there's no need for people to do both, just like for out of boredom or something. Like you don't have to do both. So yes, I've always done both, but after I trained in my degree, my first one, I didn't really feel that confident in herbs, because it was TCM herbs, and there were some people that graduated from my class, like my course, and they just took off with the herbs, and they were just really good at it, and they just really seemed to understand it. But I never really grasped like the herbs as well as I grasped other things. So I think the thing that I grasped the most was just understanding how Chinese medicine thinks, to the point where I was like, why can't you think like this? why don't other people just think like this? It just makes sense, right? Understanding the theory of Chinese medicine and how to understand that theory. And I think it was since I did the ICAM course in herbs that it made it easier, because the theory of why are we using these herbs, like why are we using these individual herbs, like what does cinnamon do, what does ginger do, what does licorice do, why would you take that out in a formula and put it in a formula, for instance, is a lot more clearer in the system I do now than it ever was in TCM. I'm not saying so TCM does have a kind of a system, but it was a lot of like rote learning and just memorizing for the sake of it. And especially with modifications of formulas, there was no rhyme or reason. Like I teach it now in some of the colleges, and like one formula can literally have like 50 different modifications for it. And then another formula has 50 different modifications, and it's not like the same herbs saying, oh, if they've got a skin problem, add these other herbs in, and no matter what the formula is, you use those herbs. Or if they've got diarrhea, you take this herb out. There's no understanding of like, well, why are we taking that herb out if they've got diarrhea? Is that applicable in every formula, or is it just this one formula? Whereas I had that in the ICAM course, and that's kind of what made me understand herbs more and make you want to practice it more. But since doing that course, it's made me realize it's really hard to be good at both things. And even my teacher says it as well. He's like, don't try to be good at both things. Just pick one of those things. Just trying to make this a little bit further out, not so close on my face. Guess the fundamentals are the key starting point. Yeah, exactly. And it depends on the teachers that you have, and it depends on your learning style as well. Like, if you're fortunate enough to have a teacher that teaches you with the same learning style that you have, then it's like, wow, I can really kind of learn this, and maybe it's different learning something. Like, had I learned the ICAM course at the very start, I don't know, maybe I still wouldn't have grasped it. Maybe I needed to do Chinese medicine for like 12 years before that, and that's what helped me grasp it. How do you know, right? Like, I constantly come across this conundrum when I'm teaching first-year students. Often they will say, oh, why didn't we learn this at the start? That would have made everything else make sense. And, like 6 weeks into it, like, or even a year into it, they learn something new, and they're like, oh, why didn't they teach us this at the start? And even that happened to me when I was learning my herbs system for the like a new system. And I remember thinking that myself, like getting halfway through it and thinking, oh, why didn't they teach us this at the start? It would have made sense. And then I thought, hang on a minute. Like, you can't learn everything at the start. And the reason why this is making sense to you now is because you've got this piece of information. And that is one of the issues with Chinese medicine learning. It's actually not it's not a linear path of learning. It's almost like this circular path, right? So even just almost like the 5 elements. And it's like, where do you start? Just pick a point and you could start anywhere. And once you know something, then that next knowledge kind of hooks onto that, and the next, So if you're listening to this and you are a student, that it's normal to be confused. And I often tell my students that I say, it's okay to be confused, for like, just absorb the knowledge and just take my word for it that this is important to learn, and just try your best to learn it. And then one day it just like clicks and you're like, oh, I understand this. I can use it. I finally feel like I can understand it. And that's kind of how it works. Well, thank you for your questions. I feel like I get to know people a little bit when I do these streams. So that's good. I like it. Reloaded Records, another great YouTube name. Awesome. Where did I do my school for TCM? And he or she says hi. Awesome. He probably. So, man face there. Hello. I studied in Perth, Western Australia, the tiniest place in the world, in a tiny school called Perth Academy of Natural Therapies, which is now deceased. The college isn't there anymore. It was a great school when I went there, and they just stopped running after a while. Like it was a very big school for naturopathy, and the first year I went there was the first year they were launching the Chinese medicine course. So I did that for that course was a 3-year degree in herbs and acupuncture back in the day where these were allowed. So now it's not allowed, as in they won't accept those kind of degrees. They're like, you have to do 4 years as a minimum. But back then there were no standards. It was just how it was. And even my teachers had that. So it was quite intense. One semester at the end, I had 10 units in one semester to try to finish it up. So it actually took me 3.5 years. I had to take a semester off because of the way the college was organized, or lack of organized. That wasn't my fault. Like, I would have loved to have just completed it in the 3 years, because at that point, every minute of your life counts. Like, I was like, I don't want to waste any time here. So then I did that. Then I went to China for 3 months in 2001, and I came back and started working in Chinese medicine straight away. And I quickly realized that I wanted to do teaching. And I was like, I had this degree, I had this qualification, let's just call it, from this college, which was an advanced diploma in traditional Chinese medicine. And that was common at that time. There was lots of people who got these diplomas or advanced diplomas, not a bachelor degree. But I didn't even have a bachelor degree. And I thought, well, how am I ever going to teach Chinese medicine? Like, I'd already started teaching it at a small shiatsu school, teaching Chinese massage, which is one of my passionate kind of areas. And I was like, okay, I need to get another degree so that I can get legitimized in the world of degrees. So I went to Curtin University and I did a degree called a master's degree in international health. And that was probably 2 years after my first thing so I sort of like had 2 years off, maybe a year off even, like, of not studying. But when you first start practicing, if you're just running your own business, it can be real quiet when you first start. So, like, you have a patient in the morning, you have this massive gap and then nothing. So this was by correspondence. The internet wasn't sort of going at that. I mean, it was going, but it wasn't prolific. Like, you could get emails, but I don't even know if I had a laptop computer then. I just wasn't common to have those things. Anyway, so I think I did have a laptop, but like, yeah, they were so expensive. Anyway, good old Windows 3.1. Anyway, so yeah, I had that, and I did that degree. And then after I graduated that, I started doing more teaching. And then I did a Cert 4 in training and assessing, which is like teaching you how to teach things, which was somewhat useful. It was just really for the piece of paper so that I could teach it. I ended up not even needing it for teaching at university, but I did it anyway. But it teaches you how to assess people and how to, like, make curriculum for people that are, have different learning styles and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so that's what I did. And then probably between maybe 5 or 7 years had gone past, and that's when my teacher, my original teacher in Chinese medicine, said to me, look, when this classical herbs course starts up again in Australia, you've got to do it. He's like, it's amazing, change your life, all this sort of stuff. And that's when I started doing the ICAM course. And just before I'd done that course, I was honestly thinking I might just quit Chinese medicine, because I'd started doing other things in life. I was still seeing patients and I was still practicing, but I was running a retail store as well. I was like importing stuff from China. I was going to China really regularly, and like I was just making products, making teas and balms and all kinds of stuff for my other business. And I'm the kind of person who needs like projects and stuff to get into and that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was kind of my journey into studying Chinese medicine and how I got into it. Awesome. Yeah, lifelong spirals of learning. It never ends. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for coming here and learning about Chinese medicine. All right, Nicholas Kimball, is there anything other than ginseng that can tonify the yuan qi? The perpetual question that's constantly asked. I'm not laughing at you, but it's just a constant question because people are just searching for the fountain of youth. There is, and you'll learn about it from ICAM, but I can't talk about it on this channel. So yeah, there is another herb that's used, but you have to be very careful with that herb. If it's not used properly, it won't be appropriate to use. So people have to be ready for it. Let's say they can't have stagnation and stuff like that going on. Otherwise, they might not feel good from taking it. Other herbs we use are like a lot. So it's basically the herbs we use are a lot more warming. They're warming the yang, right? So ginseng in TCM, they say it like tonifies yuan qi, but how does it do that? It's like helping fluids. It's really replenishing your fluid metabolism. So one of the formulas you can see ginseng in, which kind of does that, is like a Li Zhong one. So Li Zhong one's got herbs in there. It's like, so let's say it's a Tai Yin kind of formula. So if they've got like diarrhea, loose bowels, and they're deficient, right? You want to nourish that and also warm it. So it's got ganjiang, dried ginger, and that's a good example of that style of herb that can also tonify the the yang. That's warm, to kind of warm the yang. So yeah, it's kind of like you won't be able to buy this herb over the counter very easily, and I can't kind of mention it on YouTube. Anyway, hello, Brianna. It's yes, the herb that I'm mentioning is really hot, but it's not hot like spicy hot. It's just warming the yang. It's just doing that job. Oh, what a great question. Why do we always crave sweets, whether it be candied fruits, nuts, baked goods? You're making me hungry listing off all these delicious treats. Yeah, so there's two reasons why, well, there's a few reasons, but two main reasons why you're craving sweet foods. And oh, I just saw this question. I'm not sure about unallowing ear candling. I didn't know it was being unallowed. But yeah, we can talk about ear candling in a minute. So in Chinese medicine, your earth element, your spleen and your stomach do the job of digestion. And all the 5 elements have flavors associated with them as well. So sweet is the flavor of the earth, or the spleen, particularly spleen. So sweet can be 2 kinds of sweet. I think in the Pitchford book, Paul Pitchford's book called Healing with Whole Foods, he uses these 2 ways of talking about sweet. He talks about full sweet and empty sweet. Right? So let's say good sweet and bad sweet in a way. So refined sugars, like all the things you're saying, like craving candy and sugar and chocolates and all that stuff, then that's different to the other sweet, which is like in carbohydrate foods, like sweet potato, pumpkin, parsnip even. There's that sweet nature in some of those foods. And that type of sweet actually nourishes the spleen. So anything that's grown under the earth helps the earth. Right? Now, when if you crave sweet after you've eaten a meal, the main reason is going to be because your spleen and stomach are struggling to digest, right? They're struggling to do the job of digestion. I just want to try to clean this lens because I wonder whether that's why it's blurry this whole time. Is it? It probably is. It might be the lighting in here. What's that? I don't know. It's annoying me that I'm looking at a screen that doesn't look clear. So so what happens is your spleen and stomach, after you've eaten a meal, it's using your spleen's yang or qi to digest the food, right? To transform and transport the food and the fluids, send the good bits up, send the dirty dregs down. So either one of 2 things has happened. Either your spleen is so weak, so deficient that anything you eat, it's like after you eat it, it's like, oh, I'm so tired. Give me some sweet to help me do my job. So you get this, craving of sweet. Or you've overeaten. You've eaten way too much food. and you just, struggling to digest that. Any natural person would sort of struggle to digest that food, right? So if people just chronically overeat, that can happen. Once you've started the habit of sweet eating, it's really hard to break it, and it's hard to stop having so much, like the volume of sweet that you need. Like if you've ever quit sugar before and then you've gone back to eat sugar, you, instead of having one piece of chocolate like that, you were like, oh, that's quite sweet, and you feel, oh wow, that tastes so sweet, then you have like a whole block of chocolate or something, and you're like, you don't even realize how sweet it is because of that dopamine response in your brain, right? So it's that part of it's that. So yeah, how can we fix it, right? So there's a few ways you can try to fix it. One is to sometimes getting on some herbs that will tonify your spleen can help. Like, so let's say you're doing a treatment that's tonifying your spleen, or doing moxibustion, right? So if you're doing self-moxa, that might even help. So you get the moxa box and you put it on your belly, or if you're seeing an acupuncturist or whatever, and they're treating you for that. Often the sweet cravings will go down, from that. There's a few ways of treating it yourself. One is to go cold turkey and just say, right, I'm not having any sweet. It's really hard. Just go cold turkey off sugar, right? Just say, I'm going to have, sugar-free November or whatever, and just stop it altogether. And it's hard, but you probably will reset, and you won't need as much. If you had a little bit of it again, you wouldn't need as much to have it, right? So, yeah, you said you always crave fruits or sweet root plants or candy if you can't have it. So the other way to do it would be, instead of going completely cold turkey, I've done this when I've quit sugar before, is like if you go on a paleo diet, you're not supposed to have sugar, right? There's no sugar in a paleo diet, but you can have maple syrup, you can have honey, and you can have dried fruits. Now, you shouldn't have tons of that stuff anyway, but let's say you made yourself some refined sugar-free snacks, and you said, okay, if I, instead of having the candy, like, which is refined sugar, probably like cane sugar and chocolate and whatnot, I've got this other stuff I can have instead. So I'll have, like, you can have maple syrup, with like a good dessert that you can make is like avocado, with, so mash up the avocado, then add maple syrup, add a little bit of coconut oil and cocoa powder, and that makes like a chocolate mousse, right? And you give it a big mix, and then you set that, melt the coconut oil, and then set that in the fridge in little portions, right? There's little chocolate mousses. You could try something like that. Go on the internet and find different paleo sweet recipes that you can have, and sort of use that to taper down and transition away from it. I've used that on myself, and what I found is, after a week of having those things, I was like, it's actually making me feel quite ill having this volume of this stuff anyway. Like, I wouldn't even be able to eat it. And eventually you just stop craving it the more you stop having it. It's a catch-22, or whatever you call it, like a conundrum between, okay, your spleen's craving it because it wants it, because it's tired, but when you have it, it's tiring it out more. So then you're in this cycle of like continuously craving it. And it's like, where does that end? It can be really hard, especially if you're a person that like goes, oh, I feel like a sweet thing. And then you've just suddenly eaten a whole bag of lollies. Or if you're in America, you probably call them candies or whatever. Like, we call them lollies in Australia, like, snakes alive, whatever you've got there. Like, yeah, it's a good question to ask, and there's a few ways around it. So that's one of the ways. The other way around it is to ensure that you're actually eating properly anyway, because you're going to be craving sweet foods if you haven't eaten. So if you're not necessarily craving sweet after a meal, and you're just craving sweet, then sometimes you're just not even eating properly, and people are busy, and of course you're hungry, and you're like, then you get to the point where you're so tired from being hungry that you don't even have the energy to make a meal. So going on to a higher protein diet first thing in the morning will probably help. So I often advise my patients to do that. Like, if they don't have breakfast, just have either a hard-boiled egg, a bit of eggs and bacon, or eggs and Fakin, if you're a vegan, eggs in a tofu sausage, or just, I don't know, something cooked that's protein, if you can have that. Often that sets you up for a better start to the day because you're not having this big jump of like the glucose from the carby kind of breakfast. If you have toast in the morning, you're going to have this high and then this crashing down. And when you have that crashing down, that's when people go, oh, I need more, I need to crave more. And so that they have it up and down and up and down. Whereas if like a low GI diet is just that idea that you're not having this up and down, up and down. So there could be several reasons why you're craving it, but essentially in Chinese medicine, it's linked to what in TCM they call it spleen qi deficiency, or your earth element, or your digestive function of the yang ming. So like your stomach and spleen, particularly the spleen, so the power of the ability to transform and transport isn't really there. So it's kind of like struggling to kind of keep up with that. Yeah. If people have any more questions, maybe ask them in the comments now, and because we might finish this in a little bit. No problem. Thank you, Brianna. I'm glad that's helpful. What are your thoughts on countries? Yeah, I'm not sure about this unallowing ear candling. Is it like causing a dangerous thing to people or something like that? I've always thought it was a bit strange. I've done it before. I know how to do it. I've done it on myself. I know some practitioners who are like really keen on it. They love doing it. And yeah, I don't know. It is a bit of a strange one because I watched one of those Mythbuster people where they had the ear candle in the ear and then they had one burning off by itself, right? Because you open it out and you're like, oh, wow, look at all this wax in there. But I have some patients that I've done it on. They swear that it helps them. They're like, oh, I have a patient once that told me they were getting their ears syringed and their doctor was looking in their ear and saying, oh, your ears are so much cleaner now. What are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm getting ear candling regularly. So, yeah, it's a bit subjective, I think, in somewhat. Because I did that test where I put one in the ear and just burnt one, or just get an ear candle and burn one down, and you open it out and there's still all this so-called wax in the bottom of it. I don't think as much as when it's really in the ears. Yeah. I mean, you certainly can't leave patients unattended with ear candling, like fire sticking out of their ears. If anyone's not sure what the ear candling is, I wonder if it's that, or they just like, yeah, I don't know whether countries aren't allowing it. It might be their insurances not allowing it. Anyway, yeah. Does anyone else have any narcissism? That's a treatment. Oh, is there a treatment? Oh, I thought you were saying I was narcissistic or something. Is there a treatment for narcissism? It probably comes back to people's personality type. And yep. It probably comes back to people's personality types. Some of this stuff is like, well, can you really change it, right? Is that who you are? It was really interesting. I did an interview on the channel. I don't know if you guys saw that yet, but it was with a lady called Lita Herman. Lita Herman, and she runs a podcast called Inspired Action Podcast, right? So it's about alchemy in a Chinese medicine thing. Now, before I did the podcast with her, I had no idea what this stuff was. And because believe it or not, I don't know, I don't know everything about Chinese medicine. And yeah, she reached out to me to jump on the podcast, and I was like, yeah, okay. So I listened to her thing, and I was like, oh, this is really, really interesting. And she uses acupuncture and acupressure to kind of, acupuncture points to help people with these life transitions. But they kind of talk about becoming, so the idea is becoming a sage is transcending the elements. So you might have heard me talk about people's personality types in terms of the 5 elements, right? So that's the first level. You've got to find out what element you are. But then she's like, okay, if you know that, and then can you be all 5 elements? Can you transcend that? And can you become even more than that, right? And not be hindered, because every element has a hindrances of it. It has benefits and it has hindrances, right? So people that are super narcissistic, like there's obviously benefits to society and even benefits to themselves about that personality trait, were it to be expressed in a more positive way, let's say, right? So that, like, there's things that make you who you are that you really would have to work hard. Like, not everyone even has it within them to transcend those 5 elements. They're just like, nah, this is too hard, this is who I am. Maybe they just enjoy being who they are, and they're not on the journey yet, or at the point of their journey yet, to kind of seek, could there be more to life, or could I be a different person, or they're not even aware. Some people aren't even aware that they are narcissistic, so how would they know they might want to or need to transcend that kind of stuff? So but there are some things where your body can get out of balance physically, and that affects you emotionally, and it can also make things that probably are your personality traits then become pathological things, or much more pathological, right? So let's say someone's aggressive or assertive, let's say, right? So in a health, they might be assertive. So this is a good example. If you've ever done anger management training, they talk about like passive, assertive, aggressive, right? So somewhere along that kind of spectrum of things. So you want to be assertive, like, yeah, okay, I want to state what I need in life, but not aggressive at the point where I'm getting what I need and at the detriment of everyone else in society. And I guess what I'm sort of saying is, like, sometimes, like, a person can have a tendency towards either of those aspects of that. And once they get into pathology, it's almost like they can't help it. They can't help being angry, let's say, even. Like, it's just, and even like, I have patients come in and say, I know I feel angry. I don't want to be angry person, but I feel angry. I can't stop being angry. So yeah, I think if we're talking about narcissistic behaviors or being a narcissist, it might be, the first thing is like, I'm not saying it's you, it just might be someone else, but are they aware of it? Do they want to change? Or is it just who that person is and they're not even aware? So, that would be the first thing to kind of think of. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks so much. That's good. Yeah, it's been great to have a chat with everyone. And yeah, not sure what time of day. It's night time for me. Most people is the day. So get on with your day. Enjoy yourself. I'm running a course next year, so I put the link somewhere in the chat of this stream. I would love people to check it out. So it's in 2022, and the course is the Ultimate Chinese Medicine Learning Experience, something like that. So it's something I've put together. It's quite unique, and it will take you on a journey to learn pretty much all the self-help stuff that I can kind of cram into a year for you in 3 different units. So the first unit is all about the foundations of Chinese medicine, those foundational concepts that you kind of need to have a really good grasp of to understand how illness arises. So things like we talked about tonight, like why do you feel angry? Like, what would have to arise in your body in a pathological sense, in the 5 elements or whatever? Like, how could that possibly cause someone to become angry or loss of joy, and then become sad and become depressed or flat or something like that? Those kinds of things, right? How we're going to talk about the Shanghan Lun system of how illness also is caused. So you'll understand what's that Tai Yang level, what's a Yang Ming, what's a Xiao Yang level, and how to identify that when you get sick. Then you'll know, okay, I can go and get these treatments. I can go to a herbalist or an acupuncturist and get this stuff. Or what kind of herbal formulas should you have on hand at home to use when it's needed? So I'm going to go into the level of detail like that. It's kind of reckless for me to talk about these things as a one-off thing, because you need a context, right, to be able to really use these self-help things. And then the next 12 weeks is going to be talking about Chinese diet therapy, about foods as medicine, how to use, like, not just foods like, okay, here's a diet that is healthy, but Like, what foods do you have when you have a sore throat? Like, what foods are good for your lungs? What foods are good for your skin? We go through all the properties of fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds. The course outline is all on the website there. And then the last 12 weeks is all the self-help stuff that's not so much food related, but things like acupressure for pain, acupressure points that you can use for emergency situations, how to use poultices, external use herbs, things that you can just have at home or things you can get. Like let's say you were to go down to your Chinatown store, you should be able to know what that stuff is. Be able to like literally go there and go, right, I know what these herbs are. These are the common herbs that are sold there. How could I use these? And what things should I have on hand to be able to use? We'll go through like herbal formulas for like these emergency use things or cold and flu use stuff, because that's when Chinese medicine really shines out. When you use it instantaneously, as soon as that problem happens, you use it. That's what I find works so well. And so there's some things that you can just kind of use like that. So hopefully that course will empower you. So if you're really interested and you've lasted the live stream this long, then you'll love the course, because it's going to be really structured and step by step, and it'll go over the whole 12 months. There'll be breaks in between, and the 3 lots of 12-week course in there. So I'd love to have you join me. And if you've got questions about the course, you can jump onto the webpage. There's an email there. You can ask me the questions, and we'll just sign up and buy yourself a Christmas present for next year. And all the stuff that you learn, I mean, the stuff you've learned tonight on the live stream and these different things, it's stuff that never goes away. Chinese medicine never changes. It's always there. It's always there as your little friend. And it's just adapting the way of Chinese medicine thinking, okay, to these new problems that come across our paths. But it's never wasted knowledge. Like it's always going to be there. And if you go and do a proper course later on, you think I'm going to be a practitioner one day and, do my course first, this will still be the same information that you'll learn, just expanded upon probably in a course. But no matter where you study through the world, like the 5 elements, yin and yang, just as surely as the sun rises and sets, these things will never change and they'll always be the same. So thank you so much for your attention, and thank you for your lovely questions. And I'll be doing these streams a bit more often. I know I say that I say that every time I do a stream, and then I don't do one for a while, but I am going to endeavor to do this kind of once a week, I think, for a few weeks. So take care. Have a great rest of the week. What's left of it? It's Friday. Got Friday left. Most people it's Thursday morning. So yeah, enjoy yourself, and I'll see you again on another stream. Thank you.